Hello and good evening, everybody. A warm welcome. I'm very happy to see such a huge audience. So the space is packed. That's fantastic. First of all, I have to say thank you very much to the whole team of Fotografiska for inviting me to participate at this fantastic exhibition, and big congratulations to you guys. You really did an amazing job with that spectacular exhibition. So a warm applause to the Fotografiska team. So I'm very happy that I have the opportunity to introduce you a little bit tonight into my artistic work, my artistic practice. And I would say let's start right away with the presentation that I'm giving tonight, Stellar Visions, Shaping the Future of Space Exploration. For me, everything started in 2011. I saw and I photographed the last launch of an American space shuttle at the Kennedy Space Center. And that was just a mind-blowing and overwhelming experience for me. I was so blown away when I saw this shuttle rising up into the skies and into space that I made two decisions. Number one, I said I have to work on the topic of space exploration as an artistic project. And number two, I said one day I want to be in such a shuttle and I want to fly into space. So I started to work, and I started my series Outer Space, which is now in the, about 13 years that I'm working on that series. That was not planned at the beginning, but it's really a long time and ongoing project. And the series deals with the latest developments in space exploration and the way they will shape our future life on Earth, in Earth near orbit, and on other planets. So when I started to work on that series, I very soon realized it's a very theoretical thing because everybody is fascinated by space, but nobody has been there. And as an artist, I'm very much always physically involved in what I'm doing. So the performative aspect has great importance for me. So that I decided I need to go and I need to fly into space to have that experience. And at the time, I approached Virgin Galactic, which they came out with the idea of building private spaceships. Behind the company is Richard Branson, and he said, I will build private spaceships and I will fly civilians into space. So I joined Virgin Galactic in 2012, and I became a pioneer future astronaut. We were told that you guys will fly in the next two or 3 years. So about 10 years are gone, even more, and I'm still not flight. But that will change because this year, for the first time, the spaceship really flew into space. I will tell you about this a little bit later. But at the very early stage, this was all very theoretical. I saw only computer animations of the spaceship, and it doesn't seem real. So I flew down to New Mexico, and I met there with the Virgin team and Richard Branson. I saw the spaceship, and I saw it's real. And that was absolutely amazing. And I said, okay, that is the ship that I will fly one day. And then the next step, I said, you also have to do a space training. If you want to fly to space, you need to make a space training. I approached the Russian space agency, and after 1 year of negotiation with them, they allowed me to do a cosmonaut training in Star City. That's where all the professional astronauts train, and I was allowed to train with them and also do this as an artistic performance. And I have edited for you guys for tonight a little video which shows you parts of my space training. It's really exciting, so have a look. And after that, we continue to the artworks.
По поводу темного фона, это обязательно? По поводу темного фона.
2 hours?
A little bit more than 2 hours.
Really?
Don't touch this button.
Mikael? Alles klar. Melden etwas schwierig. Ja.
Willkommen zurück.
Was ist das?
Das ist der Nothalt.
Ah ja.
Ja, du kannst genau da drauf drücken. Anlage ist scharf.
Thank you.
It tries to inflate like a balloon. If somebody gets underneath you and for some reason you open the parachute or it opens prematurely, it's called the trapdoor effect. You will fall onto him and then you're entangled together. This is rather dangerous. Very good.
Yeah, there you go.
Woo! Holy shit. So, yeah, thank you. As you can see, I'm not a typical artist sitting all day long in a studio. The performative aspect, as I mentioned, is quite important for me. But it also gives you a little bit an idea what professional astronauts have to do to train for space travel. And for me, it was an exciting and very important and necessary experience. And based on these experiences, I started to create artwork. So let's have a little bit or some look at specific artworks. Here we see an installation view of the very large scale formats, this is the format that is also here exhibited in the exhibition. This artwork, Liquid Gravity, is one of the probably iconic images in that series. It pictures me during my spacewalk training underwater. So the picture is shot underwater. And it includes all the important elements of space travel. So it's the astronaut, of course. It is the overview effect on our planet. It's the technological or the technical shell that the human body needs, the life support systems which are necessary to keep a human being alive in a very hostile environment, which is space. Here we have an installation view at the Espolua Museum in Spain. We also produced a video artwork underwater, which pictures me falling down from the surface towards the ground in the space suit. I worked very intensively with ESA and Arianespace, and most of you might know that we have a European spaceport, which is in French Guiana, in Kourou. And I spend a lot of time there to learn about how a spaceport works and how a launch campaign is managed. And this is a little bit the background of the artwork, which is also part of that exhibition here. So you see that there's a launch pad just in the middle of the jungle. This is a very surrealistic setting there in French Guiana. So I spent a lot of time, I photographed from very different perspectives. Here I'm lying underneath the rocket engine in the assembly hall. I flew with helicopter over the launch pad, over the jungle. I climbed up specific viewing points to find the right perspective. So all in all, I spent a year going back and forth to French Guiana for collecting different perspectives, different elements to compose a picture that I had a long time in my mind, and that is Orbital Ascent. That is the artwork which is also presented here in the exhibition. So it's a composite of different elements, different perspectives, different views, and that's also the way how I work as an artist. I'm not interested in showing reality. I'm always interested in the construction of reality. So things might look real, but they're always a simulation or a reality construction. So here we have an installation view of that work at the Museum for Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul, in Korea. I also photographed the Russian Soyuz rocket. Here you see the big rocket when it's coming out of the assembly hall. This is the night before the launch. The rocket is still in the launch tower, and we did something very specific here. We installed a camera, remote-controlled camera, which is controlled by audio and sound waves, and the camera was installed at the launch tower, and then the result of that installation was that picture on the next day. So the rocket engine, the sound waves of the rocket engine released the shutter of the camera, and that made this incredible moment and picture possible. So the years went over. I was working on the topic, and I was waiting for my space flight, and then a tragic accident happened. Spaceship Unity, so the spaceship that I was supposed to fly with, exploded during a test flight. So it exploded in 15 kilometers altitude. There were 2 pilots in. 1 pilot died. 1 pilot survived that accident miraculously. And that was a turning point also in the whole project, because we did not know if that will continue, if they will stop the project. So a lot of questions came up if that's a realistic technical project or not. So I had to do an artistic work on that, of course. And what I did, as my artwork is very often inspired, or some of my artworks are inspired by German painter Caspar David Friedrich. And there's a very famous painting of Friedrich, which is called The Sea of Ice from 1824. And I use this painting as an inspiration to create my artwork. And what you see here is that the composition is just the same on the painting, but it's rebuilt with photographs of the spaceship wreck. In this case, I could not photograph that myself. I collected images from press photographers which were on site, and I had hundreds of different press pictures, and I stitched them all together over a long time to recreate Friedrich's composition from that painting. Here's an installation view of the final artwork. So that happened in 2014. So 9 years later, that was last year in spring, finally the spaceship was rebuilt. Several test flights were done, and it was the time to do the very final and last test flight before commercial operations. So I was invited by Branson to come there and see the spaceship, photograph the spaceship, and create an artwork. So here you see me standing in the assembly hall the day before the launch. And then a very exciting day happened, and this was the final test flight, which I was allowed to witness.
Welcome to space. Beautiful.
So it's pretty cool. So my flight is now scheduled for 26. This is the artwork that I have created based on the test flight and the shooting that I did. You see here the spaceship, which is released by a carrier aircraft. So the carrier aircraft transports the spaceship to an altitude of 15 kilometers. Then it's released, and then the rocket motor is ignited. It's an airborne launch. So this artwork here is entitled Down to Earth, and this was the game changer for the whole space exploration in the last decade. Why? Because this is the first reusable rocket. Before SpaceX invented the Falcon 9, it was not possible to bring rockets back from space. And with the Falcon 9, for the first time, it was possible to bring the rockets back several times, reuse them. And the artwork you see here combines a long time exposition of the launch. So let me see here. The line you see here is the actual launch of the rocket, and then 6 days later, the rocket came back on a drone ship, and I photographed again this stage here, and then the image combines both elements, the rocket that came back from space and the actual launch. So you might have seen this last week. This was absolutely mind-blowing footage. For the first time, SpaceX was able to bring a booster back from the Starship. That's also a total game changer. The Starship is a total game changer. I was in 21 for the first time. I went to Starbase, and I saw this incredible spaceport they're building there in the middle of nowhere. It's in New Mexico. And at the time in 21, everything's just started. So everything was under construction. So they built these giant starships, which is really an incredible size. So later on, 100 passengers will go into that spaceship. And in 21, everything was under construction, and they started with the first test flights. The funny thing is that this is not a digital composition. So the funny thing is that some of people living there didn't want to give up their houses. Yeah? So they preferred to live on a spaceport and have rockets around them. So there's still people living there in their houses, and in their backyard they have huge starships standing. So this is an artwork that I have created then based on the shooting there. It's called Starbase, and it's a triptych that shows during the night the construction of this very futuristic and really mind-blowing star. Well, it's not a launch pad, it's a star city that they are creating. And that was also the idea behind this composition. If you look a little from afar, it looks like a cityscape at night. And only when you go close, you see these are all super tall rockets. So last year happened the first test flight with the Starship on top of the booster. And I went there to photograph this again, historic event when they tested it for the first time. What you see here is the launch pad and the rocket standing on the launch pad at the day before the launch. This is 120 meters high. So it's a 44-story building that takes off into space. It's just incredible. The day before the launch, everything was quiet. And then came the day of the first test flight. So this is the moment of ignition. The artwork is entitled Orbital Launch Mount. And this is the moment when all the rocket engines are ignited. And then this happened. So the Starship took off. The power, it was so powerful that lots of parts of the launch pad got destroyed by the enormous thrust and energy of the Starship, and all the big so stones and rocks were flying around, and then the ship took off. Here you see an installation view of the artwork. And this happened 4 minutes after the launch, or during 4 minutes. So the rocket very soon got out of control because some of the engines were damaged due to the flying rocks. And then on the sky, the rocket went up and down, left and right, and it was like a drawing on the sky. So the artwork here pictures what happened during the 4 minutes on the sky before the ship got destroyed in about 40 kilometers altitude. Let's go back again to Caspar David Friedrich. I discovered this painting from Friedrich, and I read about this painting. It's called The Great Enclosure from 1832. And the fascinating thing on that painting is that there is a visualization in that painting which was at the time of when Friedrich was alive and did that painting was not possible. What you see here reminds like the planet seen from space. It looks like the oceans, like continents. So the interpretation of that painting says that Friedrich pictures something that he could not have seen at the time. Only 136 years later, it was possible to see that with Apollo 8 and the first view of the globe. So Friedrich already pictured the idea of looking down on our planet and also maybe leaving the planet and leaving our home and go to other planets. And I like that interpretation of the painting, and I did an artwork which is based on Friedrich's original painting. So I got a super high-res scan from the museum in Dresden. So it's the original painting, and I combined the painting with photograph that I shot just at the moment before the Starship took off to its first test flight. And as the Starship will bring us in the next decade probably to Mars, and the Starship allows us leaving the planet and go maybe to other celestial bodies. So Mars, of course, is a big topic always. That's the destination that we're all talking about when we talk about space exploration. Here we see an artwork which I did already in 2013. It's called Sands of Mars, and it pictures probably the first habitats that we will see on Mars, and it's shot in the Atacama Desert, right at the territory or the desert where NASA tests the Mars rovers. So Curiosity was driving exactly there, being tested before NASA sent it up to space. So the scientists brought me to that specific location that I could take that landscape picture here. When we talk about Mars, we talk about our kids, because our kids will definitely spend a lot of time in space, and our kids will probably fly to the moon and to Mars. Maybe they will live on the moon, they will live on Mars and work there. So I thought it's very important to do also something with the younger generation. And then I came up with the idea, how would it look when kids go on space travel or are in a space station? So I designed, together with a friend, a spacesuit for a young boy. The young boy is actually my son. And then this artwork came out. Yeah? So it's a young person floating in a kind of space station and orbiting around Mars. So that's the future. That's the future for our kids. The near future is the moon. We will definitely go back to the moon in 2 or 3 years. We will land again on the moon, and we will stay on the moon. And it's so hard to do that, to get back. We were there already, but now it's 50 years over, and it's really difficult to reactivate all the technology to get back to the moon. For the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the first moon landing, Apollo 11, I created this artwork. I went through the archive of all the Apollo pictures. These are 4,000 negatives. And from these 4,000 negatives, I selected a few hundred ones, and I recreated a moon landscape, and I wanted to show all the 12 moonwalkers. So only 12 people have stepped on the moon. And to celebrate this, I'm showing all the 12 astronauts, and every astronaut is conducting a scientific experiment. And that was the interesting thing when I saw all the footage. It's not about saluting the flag and jumping around. They did very important scientific experiments. So I have a little close-up here where you can see that. So they were all working on the moon. And I think that is really important to know. Then we did a very, very large installation of that piece. That was for a conference room for a German satellite company. So they asked me to scale that up for their meeting room, and we put that in 20 meters size. So it's a very immersive installation then for their meetings there. When we go to space, when we go to moon, when we put our satellite infrastructure in space, we are facing a big problem, and that's pollution. We have put over 600,000 objects in space now flying around our head, and that's space junk, space debris. And these particles, these elements, these objects are flying around with 28,000 kilometers per hour and are a massive threat to our satellite infrastructure in space. So I created this work together with the German Space Agency, and based on their database, every little spherule you see here is a real existing object in space. We also did a video work showing the development of space debris from 1957 with Sputnik, which was the first object in space, up to the year 2046. So we did an extrapolation. What will happen if we do not clean up the mess up there. And that's a so-called cascade effect, what could happen that these debris really augments exponentially. Let's have a quick look into that video. So every spheroid is a real existing object in space. Before we send up all these objects into space, spacecraft, satellites, other things, we need to test them. And what you see here is me working at the ESTEC, that's the European Space and Technology Center in the Netherlands. And there they simulate space conditions in this huge what is it? A container, a hall, a very unique place. And they simulate the extreme temperatures in space, super cold to super hot, and the vacuum conditions. So that is a very, very surrealistic place also. And I was allowed to spend there 2 days to work there and to photograph. And this is the artwork, which is called Space Simulator, which I created in this very unique location. Humans also need to be tested, as I showed you before. Before you go up to space, you have to do a lot of training, and your body needs to be tested to be fit for the extreme conditions of the hostile environment of space. What you see here is an artwork which is picturing the largest centrifuge on Earth. This is also in Star City, the Russian Space Agency training center. And so we were put inside this also and spinning around to cope with the extreme G-forces. This is an installation view for a great show also in Seoul. Now let's go a little bit to astronomy, which is also an important part of space exploration. This artwork called Gravitation Entanglement pictures an event very much in the future. In about 4 to 5 billion years, our galaxy will collide with our neighborhood galaxy. So the Milky Way is going to collide with the Andromeda galaxy. And we already know today that this will happen. We can calculate it. It's crazy. And what I liked so much about this discovery, this idea that normally the two galaxies, they would just they would not collide, they would go apart, but with their gravitational forces, they are attracting each other. And that brings the two galaxies to the collision, and the collision will be the end of our galaxy, the end of our neighbor galaxy, and the beginning of something totally new. And if we would be alive in 4 to 5 billion years, that would be the night sky that we would see. On the right side, you see the Andromeda galaxy. On the left side, you see the Milky Way. So both images are coming from Hubble Space Telescope. And then over a long time of digital painting, I stitched pixel by pixel, star by star, the two galaxies together to show the collision process of these two galaxies. Here's an installation view of the large-scale piece. Several years ago, I had the incredible opportunity to photograph the golden mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope. So NASA gave me the opportunity to spend a day in the clean room and see one of that golden mirrors. That was the heaviest clean room procedure that I've ever undergone. So it took hours and hours and hours until I was clean. And then I was allowed, I had to put these on these suits, and then I was allowed to go in and photograph one of the golden mirrors. As you know, the telescope now is orbiting around the moon and bringing us spectacular and incredible new footage from the origins of our cosmos. This is the artwork that I have created based on the shooting at the James Webb Space Telescope clean room. It's called Golden Eye. Here's an installation view at the ZKM Museum in Germany. This artwork is also exhibited here in the show. It's called FAST, and it pictures the largest radio telescope on the planet. It's located in central China, and the dimension of this radio telescope is just incredible. It has 500 meters in diameter. So it's really half a kilometer. Yeah. So it's just incredibly huge. And the Chinese built this telescope with the primary purpose to find and detect extraterrestrial signals. So the instrument is built to find other civilizations. And I liked a lot that idea that we're putting so much scientific knowledge, so much energy and construction knowledge and work into something to look back in the cosmos and to answer the question, where do we come from? And are there other civilizations maybe which we haven't found yet? This is the installation view in the Auckland Art Gallery in New Zealand, and you will see this also in the exhibition here. So I'm coming already to the last slide of the presentation. This artwork here, Starlink, shows a building which is one of the coolest building, I think, on the planet. It's hidden in the Atacama Desert in the middle of nowhere. And the most talented and most important astronomers are working in that building. The Atacama Desert hosts the cutting-edge telescopes also on the planet, visual telescopes. And as you might have heard, SpaceX is putting a so-called constellation network of satellites around the globe. So there's a big and dense web net of thousands, 10,000s of satellites. So the goal is to put between 40 and 60,000 satellites around the planet. And the thing is that these satellites are visible with the naked eye for us, but also it's a huge challenge and problem for astronomy, because the astronomers no longer can really look into the universe without seeing all these satellites flying by. And the artwork here is a composition of two images. I photographed the building in the Atacama Desert, and it's juxtaposed with an image that a telescope there shot. And the lines, the scratches you see here are satellites. It's the reflection of satellites which are flying through the image of the astronomers. And this raises fundamental questions also about space exploration and the future of space technology and space travel. We all are used to look into the starry night sky and dream about the cosmos, dream about certain things, have questions about our existence. And now technology inscribes itself into the starry night sky. And the question is, who is allowed to do that? Yeah, so it's one company who just started it, they just did it, but there's no legal base to do that. And I think it really starts up a discussion, who is allowed to transform our starry night sky? So I will end my presentation. If you're interested in learning or seeing more about the Outer Space series, there's a really great publication that we did 3-4 years ago, the Outer Space Volume 2. I think we will have that here in the bookstore from next week on, so you can get it here or also get it online. So I have to thank you very much for your attention. Please also go on Instagram or on the website, and you see a lot of more footage about the Outer Space series. So I say thank you very much for paying attention. I hope it was inspiring to you and maybe raised some questions. Maybe we will have some questions after this presentations. But first of all, I'm very happy that I can call my old friend Göran to come on stage and we have a little talk.
Thank you. Well done, brother. Hello.
I was in time. That's great.
Right. Well done. Exactly. And I know we don't have a lot of time, and so I'm going to roll right into it. My name is Göran Roth. I am the chairman of Fotografiska Global, and I love photography and I love art. And I have 700 questions, and I know I'm not going to get them all in, but I think a place where we're going to want to start, I think, is I think that this is going to be very simplified, so please don't yell at me. I think scientists inherently tend to be optimists, and I think artists can be a little bit pessimistic. I think as artists, we often like to point out things in the world that aren't perfect yet, whereas I think scientists are often out there looking for, I don't know what they're looking for, actually. I'm fascinated and grateful that we have them. But in thinking about that and thinking about like what, I feel like there's been disconnect over the last few years. I mean, we actually have people now who believe the earth is flat. There are people who believe we've never been to the moon. There are people who, some of us rightly so, don't trust images anymore because they've been so manipulated. You composite images. I love that. I think it's great. Although I think they're always images that have either been made by you or that have come from a public source. Big question. How do we get art to help us rekindle a love and a fascination and a trust for science? Is there a way to get there? And can you do it?
Well, I can add maybe a little part with the work that I'm doing. Over the past years, or more than a decade, I'm working and collaborating a lot with scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs. So I'm always working at the intersection of art, technology, and science. And I think this is a very important and fruitful collaborations because we all can learn from each other and we have tools that the other one has not. And these days, I think it's more and more important that we understand science, that we estimate science, that we learn what science is telling us about our planet. Mm-hmm. Especially if we talk about the topic of climate change, we know so much about the planet. We have,
and I want to interrupt you for those people who are just meeting Mikael for the first time. This is not the only series of work he does. He has an incredible series that you've been working on for equally long, almost, about climate change. And obviously, the minute you start thinking about space and looking back down, you realize that we have one climate. So go take more look at Mikael's work. It's remarkable. But I'm sorry, interrupted you mid-flow about climate change.
Yeah, so the amount of data and scientific knowledge that we have on our planet is as huge as never before in humankind. So we need to use this. We need to understand this. And that is so important. So as an artist, I see myself a little bit as a translator between the scientists, the engineers, and the public. Because very often scientists are so expert in what they do and in so complex fields they work that they're also very narrow-minded. So they're like a little in a tunnel. And they're very thankful if somebody comes to open that tunnel a little bit and say, what you guys are doing is of interest for a great public. We need to find other ways of visualization and communication to tell the public what you guys are doing and what relevance this has for the public and for our daily lives. And that's a little bit the role that I see myself as an artist.
You posed a question last night at dinner that I've sort of been chewing on, and the question was, well, let me phrase it differently. I think a lot of the images and a lot of the work and a lot of the science we're benefiting from has over the last, I don't know, pick a number, 100 years, 50 years, whatever, been funded by all of us as people and states who ultimately spend our money for us. And now we have some very wealthy people investing in space and largely moving humanity forward because of it. But you asked who owns space. So I think it's a really interesting question. And just to come back and not to get everybody riled up with terminology, but I think when certainly the Western world went out to discover the rest of the world and then subsequently colonized it, we talk about colonizing space, the idea was like, oh, it's ours. And the only fight was, does it belong to the king or does it belong to the Pope? And as we think about going into space, who gets to do what once we get to the moon? Who decides that? Any ideas? Any suggestions?
It's a big question because in the last century, we had the space race, which was politically driven just to prove that things can technically be done. But now it's about commercialization of space. So space will become a big business field. So satellite technology is a huge business field. The next one will be mining asteroids and mining the moon. The moon hosts very precious elements, helium-3. So the US, Europe, China, they're all about the idea, how can we mine resources on the moon? So who is allowed to do that? A state, a private company, colonizing, which is a word that today we shouldn't use anymore, or question what means it would
We
colonize.
should understand what it means.
Yeah, but we need to discuss what means colonizing Mars. I mean, who is allowed to install a new civilization on another planet? Can a company do that? Can a private person do that? Is that something that one government can do, or is that something that the whole Earth as a whole civilization should do? And what is the plan for bringing or building another civilization on Mars? There is no plan. We never heard about this. We just learn about the technology that makes possible to go there. But what are we going to do there? And also on the moon. So these are fundamental and big questions, I think, for the future of humanity.
Well, Fotografiska has been growing and we're definitely ready to open on Mars. I want to open it up to questions. I know we don't have a lot of time. And for those of you who aren't sure, we also have a lot of other artists from the show here with us. But yes, I see you, but I don't have a microphone for you. So just yell it and I'll repeat it. No, a microphone is coming up speedily to your right. Doink.
Well, I don't know if I can ask actually two questions, but I will try to be as synthetic as possible. The first one is, we all know that AI now can compose images that can, in a sense, be quite similar to the ones that you produce. How do you see your work competing, let's put it this way, with the results of AI? And the second one is, it costs a lot of money to support a project like yours, and I'm very curious about, with all the connections between the commercial interests that are behind these projects and what you showed to us today, how do you manage to fund your project?
Okay, question number one, super important. That's a big topic, of course, today. And for me, it is so important to have the personal involvement, the personal experiences to create these photographs and this artwork. I could not have created these pictures without being there, having the personal experience and having the dialogue with the scientists, with the engineers, with these people. So the learning process of being there is the base and the fundament for creating the artwork. Of course, if you see the result, you could say, okay, this is maybe, I need 10 prompts and I get the same result. Yeah? But you will not get it because or I could not get it because I need the process to go there. Yeah? So the journey to that work is a long one. And if I work with AI, means that I'm writing prompts and I have a result. But all the way in between is cut off. And that is nothing that for me is of interest. So I need the process. of reaching these images, of creating these ideas. That's very important for me. Number two, funding is always a problem, of course. Most of these things, travels, trainings, are funded by myself, just by the revenues of selling artwork. So it's you see a compression of many things that I did over a long period, over a decade. So of course that's not coming from today to tomorrow. I started with small steps and I added these steps and then it moved forward. What I of course could not fund is the space flight. That is indeed funded by 3 of my collectors.
Anyone else? Coming in? Can we get a microphone? Yeah, you can try, but I think we're recording and it's nice to be able to have it for the record.
Hi, so I have a question around, your space training was like a performance art, as you explained it. And by that, I was hoping to understand if the way that you refer to yourself as an astronaut, is it also, in a way, a stage name?
In a way?
A stage name, a performance name to refer to yourself as an astronaut, or if it's something, after training, do you walk away with being an astronaut certification, or, do you want to inspire us to think of ourselves as astronauts? It's in my understanding of an astronaut, it's somebody that does that for a profession. So how that comes into your artwork in referring to yourself as an astronaut, how do you bring those two worlds together?
Well, that is something that is now in a transformation and changing process. Astronaut, of course, always was a profession for trained people who worked as astronauts. That will change now because space will open for everybody. And so civilians will have the opportunity to fly into space. And per definition, if you fly into space, if you pass the Kármán line, per definition, you are an astronaut. And you sorry? Yes, you are. So an astronaut is, of course, somebody who is in a spaceship and flies into space, even if your profession is an artist or a curator or an engineer or whatever. So this strong line is now blurred because more and more people will have the possibility to fly into space, from suborbital flights to going to the moon. Yeah, so for all of us, for future generations, we will have the possibility to become astronauts when we fly into space. So I think it's no longer just a profession.
Are we still using the word cosmonaut? I always thought it was cooler.
Sorry, a cosmonaut is the Russian version.
Yeah, no, I thought it was always a marketing term because it was just a bunch of fighter pilots originally, and then they said we got to give it a name. I thought it was great, Frame.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Back to up here. We're going backwards first. Sorry.
Hi, good evening.
Hey.
You said earlier that you also do work about climate change. Now, what's your opinion about the link between the two, since space exploration has a hugely negative impact on our own climate right here when it comes to things like the fuel that's used or even the destruction of native land that's used to build all those huge buildings. So what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, there are two sides, of course. There are huge impacts, especially because the number of rocket launches is growing massively. So that has it has an impact, of course, on the environment. We saw the pollution of the orbits, which is also and it is an impact on our environment. The orbits are also part of our natural environment. That is correct on one side. On the other side, I think we are depending extremely on these technologies. We are deeply rooted in our daily lives in space technologies. And if we want, or all we know about climate change is sea level rise, glacier melting. We know that from Earth observation technologies. So without all these satellites up in space, scientists would have no data to work and to produce climate models. How would you know that a sea level rise is rising 1 millimeter here and 5 millimeter there? So that can be only measured with the satellite infrastructure that we have in space. Sustainability also is an interesting topic because if we land on the moon, if we land on Mars, we have to invent new technologies, how to use what we have there and how to use this sustainable in a circular process because we cannot bring much stuff to the moon and to Mars. So we have to invent new technologies to build, rebuild and reuse. So I think the positive aspects of future space exploration will help us a lot to cope with the challenges of climate change.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of other places where we can be better for the environment than curbing space exploration. I think we've got, I don't know how many questions. There's definitely one up here. One or two, let's do one or two, and then...
Hi.
Hey, hi.
For oblate spheroid reasons, most rocket launches are done close to the equator. Do you ever feel trapped by that background scenery because you do a lot of landscape work?
Sorry, I didn't get the question again.
Most rocket launches are done close to the equator because Earth's
because of the rotation of the maximum rotation of the Earth.
Do you ever feel trapped in this like equatorial scenery? No.
And in his climate work, he spends enough time at the poles, so he does get to go everywhere. It's a great question, though. Who else? We got somebody. We got one more right here, right behind.
Hi. It's a related question to the one before. So when you said you also work on climate change, and I have to admit I don't know your work, but do you think we actually need to go to space, or should we use those resources to fix the problems that we have here? Because it takes a lot of brain power or money that is invested in space that we might have a better usage for fixing some issues here.
Well, that's a question that comes, of course, very often. And the thing is, we need technological innovation. And space exploration brings us forward and will help us with a lot of technological innovation that we need to counteract the impacts of climate change. The problems are so big in that aspect that we will not be able just to fix that by flying less or neglecting some things that we shouldn't do. We need a whole system change. And space exploration will help us a lot to find new ways and possibilities to cope with these challenges. So I personally think it is super important for the existence of our civilization. We need to leave this planet, and we need to, we don't need to leave it behind, but we need to leave it and to venture into space and go to other moons and other planets to guarantee the survival of our species. That's for sure.
Who's going to space first, a gallerist, a curator, or an artist?
Now, hopefully the artists. I think it's very important that artists go to space because we have different perspective, different tools, different emotions, different scenery, stories that we can tell to bring that back to the public and to the audience. So engineers, scientists, they don't have the tools to really to engage the public in the importance of what they're doing. And I think artists really have to go up to space and bring different stories of the adventure of space explorations.
Really cool to have you. Thank you very, very much. Mikael, Najjar.